A poor caregiver took care of a billionaire in coma, and the unexpected happened. Before we begin the story, please leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Emily Matthews had always struggled. Working long hours at a free clinic in New York City barely paid the rent, and often there wasn't enough left for food. But one call changed everything. A wealthy family was offering her a high-paying job to be the caregiver for their son, Alex Carter, a billionaire tech mogul who had been in a coma for 2 months. The salary, $10,000 a month, far more than she had ever dreamed of. The only catch: she'd have to live in his mansion and care for him 24/7. When Emily arrived at the Carter estate, she felt swallowed by its opulence. The towering iron gates, the grand marble floors, and the dazzling chandelier, all designed to flaunt their wealth. She followed a silent butler through the maze of rooms until they arrived at a sitting room where Mrs. Jacqueline Carter, Alex's mother, awaited. Mrs. Carter, wearing a sleek navy gown with diamonds glittering on her wrist, looked Emily up and down as if measuring her worth. "You came highly recommended," she said coldly, "but I need someone disciplined, patient, and discreet. My son has been in a coma for 2 months. You will bathe him, change his clothes, monitor his vitals, and most importantly, don't fail me." Emily was stunned. The task seemed overwhelming, but the money was life-changing. The family expected her to live in Alex's room to care for him, sleep in the same room as a billionaire, a man who had once controlled an empire. She hesitated, but the offer was too good to turn down. Her world was about to change. "Do you understand?" Mrs. Carter asked. "Yes, ma'am," Emily replied, her heart pounding. They moved to Alex's room, a vast space filled with expensive furniture. Alex Carter lay in the center of the room, his body still and lifeless. Even in his coma, his sharp features, muscular frame, and the machines monitoring his condition screamed wealth and power. This man, who had once been on top of the world, was now completely helpless. "You start tomorrow," Mrs. Carter said, pointing to the small bed beside Alex's. "Your job is simple. Keep him clean, massage his muscles daily, and change his bedding. He cannot be left alone at night." Emily nodded, her mind spinning. She had never cared for a coma patient before, let alone one with such a powerful past. The air in the room felt heavy, as though something darker was lurking. This was her life now, and Emily felt a chill run down her spine, realizing that this job was far more complicated than it seemed. The secrets of the Carter family, and perhaps Alex himself, would soon begin to unravel. The days began to blur into one another as Emily settled into her new life at the Carter estate. The mansion was vast, more like a small palace, filled with endless rooms, corridors, and gardens that seemed to go on forever. The staff was meticulous and cold, with Mrs. Evelyn, the housekeeper, being the only one who offered Emily a semblance of kindness, though even that was reserved and professional. Each morning, Emily would wake up early and begin her day by checking on Alex. She'd administer his medications, monitor his vitals, and talk to him, mostly about her day and small things about herself, though there were moments when she couldn't help but wonder if he could actually hear her. Each day, she washed him, massaged his stiff limbs, and changed his bedding, feeling the growing weight of her responsibilities on her shoulders. Despite the luxury surrounding her, Emily felt isolated. The family remained distant, almost indifferent to her presence. Mrs. Carter would visit only once a day, her face a mask of detached authority, checking on Alex as if he were just another asset she owned, rather than her son. She would give Emily a quick, formal instruction, then leave without a word. The other staff, though polite, treated her like she didn't belong, and the mansion's grandeur only accentuated how small and insignificant she felt. But things were about to change, though Emily wouldn't realize it at first. It was the 5th day when it first happened. Emily had just finished bathing Alex and was gently massaging his arms to prevent muscle atrophy when she noticed it. It was small, almost imperceptible, but her heart skipped a beat, a slight twitch in his hand. For a moment, Emily stared at his fingers, unsure if her mind was playing tricks on her. She had been talking to him while she worked as usual. "You know, Alex, I'm not sure if I'm even good enough for this job. I mean, I'm just a nurse's assistant, but then again, this mansion is overwhelming. It's like I'm trapped in a dream. Everything is so perfect, and here I am, just me." She chuckled nervously to herself as she finished rubbing his shoulders. The silence was so heavy in the room that the soft beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound. The feeling of isolation washed over her again. No one cared about her in this house. They wanted her to do her job, and that was all. But then, twitch. Her breath caught in her throat. Could it have been a reflex? Maybe, but she wasn't sure. Emily hesitated, her hands frozen on his arm. "Alex," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you hear me?" For a moment, she thought she saw his lips move ever so slightly, but the stillness of his face remained unchanged. She leaned closer, feeling a wave of warmth spread through her chest. "If you can hear me, Alex, squeeze my hand." Nothing. Still, her heart raced, and she felt the tiniest flicker of hope ignite in her. She didn't know why. Perhaps it was just wishful thinking, a moment of desperation. But she knew something had shifted in the room. Could it be possible that Alex, this man who had once ruled over everything with arrogance, could still hear her? The next few days passed uneventfully. Emily continued to care for Alex, speaking to him each time she entered his room. Sometimes she would read to him from books she found in the library, hoping that the sound of her voice might spark something inside him. It was the only connection she had to him. These one-sided conversations, these small moments where she spoke as if he might be listening. One morning, as Emily was adjusting Alex's pillow, something caught her eye. She blinked in disbelief. A single tear fell from the corner of his eye. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. But when Emily wiped his cheek with a soft cloth, the tear was real. It shimmered briefly in the morning light that filtered through the heavy curtains. Her pulse quickened, and she reached out to touch his face. "Alex," she whispered, her voice trembling. Are you trying to tell me something?" Her mind raced as she pulled back, unsure of what she was seeing. A tear, a response. It could have been a reflex, right? But why? Could it really be true? Tears threatened to spill from Emily's own eyes as she sat by the bed, her heart heavy with emotions she didn't fully understand. She had been caring for Alex for over a week, and in all that time, this was the first sign of anything at all, that he was still there. She spoke again, more softly this time, almost in a murmur. "You're in there, aren't you? I don't know how or why, but I believe you can hear me." She squeezed his hand again, praying for another sign. This was the moment she had been waiting for. But nothing else happened. No more tears, no movement. Just silence. Days passed after the tear, and while Emily still couldn't be sure if Alex was truly aware, she found herself speaking to him more often. She would talk about everything and anything, her past, her struggles, the little things that made her day-to-day life feel real. She'd even find herself joking, though the laughter felt hollow without any response. But still, she couldn't help but hope that somehow, somewhere, Alex was listening. One afternoon, as she was massaging his legs, she noticed something else. A subtle tightening in his muscles as she moved her hands across his calf. Her pulse quickened again. It wasn't just the muscle reflexes she'd been trained to recognize. It felt different, as if he was reacting to her touch. "Alex, are you awake?" Emily asked, her voice soft but urgent. She held her breath for a moment, watching his face, praying for some kind of reaction. But once again, nothing. Still, that tiny bit of hope lingered, like a flame she couldn't quite extinguish. Could it be possible? Could she really be the one to bring him back from the depths of his coma? The breakthrough came a few days later when Emily returned to Alex's room after dinner. The staff had all retired for the night, and the mansion was quiet, save for the soft hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of wind rustling through the trees outside. Emily stood in the doorway, looking at Alex's motionless form, and something inside her stirred. She sat beside him on the bed, the stillness between them overwhelming. She took his hand gently, holding it in both of hers. "Alex, I don't know what happened to you. I don't know who you were before all this. But I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere, you hear me?" It was then, just then, that it happened again. A small movement. His fingers twitched ever so slightly in her grasp. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at his face, hoping against hope for a response. Nothing. But the fingers, they moved again. Emily gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. She looked around the room as if expecting someone to jump out from the shadows, as if the world itself was in on this impossible moment. But it was just her and Alex. The next day, Emily couldn't stop thinking about what had happened the night before. She continued with her usual routine, bathing Alex, massaging his muscles, speaking to him. And she noticed more signs, small, almost imperceptible things that confirmed her belief that he was in some way aware. There was the faint twitch of his fingers when she held his hand. There was a slight rise in his chest when she spoke to him in a comforting tone. But even with all these small victories, Emily was left wondering, what could she do with this knowledge? She was just a nurse after all. The family, the Carters, they were the ones with the power, and Emily knew they wouldn't believe her, wouldn't take her seriously. She was just a caregiver, a maid to them. But Emily couldn't stop herself. She had come to care for Alex. And if he was truly trying to communicate with her, if he was truly coming back, then it was her responsibility to help him. She couldn't keep quiet. She had to make them believe her. And so, she began talking to Alex more, gently encouraging him to respond. She told him stories from her own life, about her mother, her struggles, her dreams for a better future. She couldn't let him slip away again, not when there was a chance, however small, that he could hear her. Emily spent the next few days feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. The small signs that Alex might be aware of her, his subtle movements, and the tear that had fallen from his eye, kept her up at night, wondering if he was really waking up, or if she was just imagining things. There were moments when she thought she saw something in his eyes, a flicker of recognition. But each time, he would slip back into the stillness that had dominated him for so long. As days passed, Emily's attachment to Alex grew stronger. She found herself speaking to him even more, telling him about her day, the frustrations she faced in this mansion of wealth, and the isolation she felt. She knew that his family wasn't interested in her emotional well-being. They only cared about whether she could do her job and keep Alex alive. But there was something about Alex, something beyond his wealth, beyond his power, that began to pull at her heartstrings. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when Emily discovered the truth. She had just finished giving Alex a sponge bath when Mrs. Carter entered the room. Emily hadn't been expecting her, and Mrs. Carter's presence was always unnerving, but this time her expression was different. There was something in her eyes, something guarded and cold. "How is he today?" Mrs. Carter asked, her tone neutral, but there was a sharpness to it, as though she was already prepared for bad news. Emily, though surprised by the sudden appearance, answered as she always did, her voice calm and professional. "He's the same, ma'am. I've been talking to him every day, reading to him, and doing the usual care routines. There are still some signs, small movements, like his fingers twitching, his muscles reacting to the massage. "It's not much, but it's something." "Mrs." Carter didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stepped closer to Alex's bed, her eyes scanning his still form. "You know, Emily," she began, her voice almost a whisper, "he doesn't respond to you out of gratitude or affection. He's just a body, a vessel for what was once my son." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She had always sensed the coldness between Alex and his family, but hearing it so directly, spoken so casually by his mother, made her blood run cold. Emily looked down at Alex, unsure of how to respond. She had grown attached to him, believed that something real had been happening. But Mrs. Carter's words shook that belief to its core. Was Alex just a project for her to complete? A task to check off on a list? Before Emily could gather her thoughts, Mrs. Carter continued, "You don't know what it's like. This man, this Alex, was everything to me. And now he's nothing, a fragile shell. His company, his wealth, it's all I have left of him. And you, Emily, you need to understand that." Emily's heart raced, and her pulse quickened. She hadn't known the depths of the tension within the Carter family. She had assumed, like everyone else, that Alex's mother was grieving her son's accident. But this was different. Mrs. Carter's words weren't those of a mother trying to hold on to a child. These were the words of a woman who had lost control of her empire. Over the next few days, Emily began to piece together more troubling details. Mrs. Carter's words echoed in her mind, and she started noticing the strange, almost obsessive way Alex's family behaved toward his recovery, or lack thereof. The doctors were only allowed to do the bare minimum, never pushing Alex too hard. Nurses would come and go, but no one seemed eager to help him wake up. One evening, Emily overheard a conversation between Mrs. Carter and one of the family's advisors. She had been walking down the hall when she heard her name mentioned. Curiosity got the best of her, and she quietly pressed her ear to the door. "She's good at what she does," the advisor said, his voice low, "but she's just a nurse. We can't let her get too attached. If Alex wakes up too soon, it'll disrupt everything." Mrs. Carter's voice was sharp. "I don't care what she thinks. Emily's just here to do a job, nothing more. She doesn't understand the stakes." Emily froze, her stomach turning as she realized what they meant. The longer Alex stayed in a coma, the more control the family retained over his assets. He was worth millions, and his family was making decisions that would impact his entire life, and hers, without a second thought. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had been nothing more than a pawn in a game she didn't even know she was playing. The family was intentionally prolonging Alex's coma for their own gain. The thought of it made her blood boil. She had been nursing and caring for a man who might not even want to stay in a coma if he knew the truth. They were keeping him in a state of helplessness to maintain control. That night, Emily sat alone in her small bed, her mind racing. The mansion felt colder than usual, the silence more suffocating. She was angry, more than she had ever been in her life. The family she had been working for, who had promised her a better life, had been playing a dangerous game with Alex's health. She wasn't just going to stand by and watch anymore. She had already started seeing the signs, feeling the faintest flickers of hope that Alex was still there, buried under the wreckage of his accident. But now, she realized that if she truly cared for him, she had to take matters into her own hands. The next morning, Emily made a decision. She would no longer be passive in this situation. She would fight for Alex, whether it was against his family's wishes or not. Emily wasn't going to let them control his life any longer. The first step in her plan was simple. She had to confront Mrs. Carter. Emily had prepared herself mentally for the confrontation, but nothing could have prepared her for the coldness that radiated from Mrs. Carter when they met in the large sitting room that afternoon. "Mrs. Carter," Emily began, her voice trembling but resolute. "I need to talk to you about Alex." Mrs. Carter barely looked up from the magazine she was reading. "What about him?" she asked, her tone dismissive. "I think Alex is ready to wake up," Emily said, her voice growing stronger. "I've seen the signs. He's responding to me, reacting to touch. He's not the same as when I first started caring for him. He's coming back." Mrs. Carter's lips curled into a thin smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Emily, I don't know what you think you're seeing, but you're wrong. You're just a nurse. This is a delicate process. Alex is not some experiment you can fix. His condition is complicated and we need time." "I'm not asking for time," Emily snapped. "I'm asking you to see what I see. I'm asking you to let him recover. Let him make the decision to wake up. If you're not going to help him, then I will, Mrs. Carter's eyes narrowed, her calm demeanor slipping for just a second. "You don't understand what you're saying. If Alex wakes up too soon, it'll ruin everything. You don't know what's at stake." Emily clenched her fists, her heart pounding in her chest. "I understand more than you think. What I don't understand is why you're willing to let him rot away in that bed. He deserves more than this, and I won't let you stop me from helping him." The silence between them was thick, like a storm that was just about to break. Emily stood her ground, waiting for Mrs. Carter's next move. Finally, Mrs. Carter stood up, walking toward the window with an air of authority that seemed to suck the warmth from the room. She paused for a moment, then turned slowly to face Emily. "You think you can change things? You think you can make him better?" Mrs. Carter's voice was colder now, like ice cracking under pressure. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Emily. This is my son, my family, and I won't let you destroy it. If you want to stay here and continue working, you'll do it my way. Or you can leave." Emily stood her ground, her heart hammering in her chest. The silence between her and Mrs. Carter felt suffocating, as if the entire mansion had come to a standstill, holding its breath. Mrs. Carter's expression was stone cold, her eyes piercing as she studied Emily. The usual warmth that Emily had hoped to find in a motherly figure was gone, replaced with something cold, calculating. She had expected to be met with resistance, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. "You're asking for too much, Emily," Mrs. Carter said finally, her voice low but steady. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. My son isn't just some patient you can tend to. He is the heir to everything, the Carter fortune, the empire he was supposed to run. If you think you can just wake him up and make him normal again, you're gravely mistaken." Emily swallowed, the words cutting deeper than she could have anticipated. She had known this family was wealthy, powerful, and used to getting what they wanted. But the coldness of Mrs. Carter's words was something she couldn't ignore. Alex wasn't just her son. He was the key to an empire, a vast fortune. "What do you mean by that?" Emily asked, her voice trembling, but determined. Mrs. Carter stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Alex was the one who kept everything in line. The businesses, the investments, the controlling shares in countless companies. When the accident happened, it threw everything into chaos. People were waiting for him to wake up, waiting for him to take charge again. Do you think I can just hand everything over to a son who's broken?" Emily's mind raced, struggling to piece together the full picture. Alex had been in a coma for months, not because of a simple accident, but because of the power struggle it had caused. The family's empire was crumbling, and it was clear they needed him to wake up, not for his health, but to regain control over everything. "You've been using him," Emily said, her voice shaking with fury. "He's not a tool for your family's business. He's a human being. He deserves to be treated like one." Mrs. Carter's lips curled into a thin smile, almost pitying. "I understand your frustration, Emily, but this is bigger than your moral compass. Alex was always about power. The moment he wakes up, the control will shift. And believe me, no one, not even you, can stop that." Emily stood silently for a moment, feeling the weight of her words, her actions. She had seen what had happened to Alex, the man who had everything, now reduced to a lifeless shell in a grand mansion. And yet, it wasn't enough for his family to care about him. They only wanted what he represented: power, wealth, and control. But Emily wasn't backing down. This wasn't just about her job anymore. This was about Alex's right to live, to make his own choices. She would not let them keep him in this prison. "You don't control him anymore, Mrs. Carter," Emily said, her voice firm. "He's a person. And I'm going to make sure he has a chance to live, to wake up, to be himself again. You won't stop me." The next few days passed in a blur for Emily. She was still reeling from her confrontation with Mrs. Carter, but there was no time to waste. She had made up her mind. She would find a way to help Alex, no matter the cost. Emily spent the next few nights researching everything she could about coma recovery. She read medical journals, watched videos on rehabilitation, and even consulted a few online forums where doctors and nurses shared their experiences. She knew she wasn't a specialist, but she had to try. Every morning she would carry out her usual routines with Alex, bathe him, massage his limbs, monitor his vitals. But this time, she did it with purpose. She wasn't just doing her job. She was preparing for the moment when Alex would wake up. She spoke to him more often now, telling him about everything she had learned and asking for his help. She told him stories about her own life, about the hardships she had endured, about the people who had come and gone, and about how she had always dreamed of helping someone, making a real difference. "Alex, you can hear me, can't you?" she would whisper, her voice soft but filled with a sense of urgency. "I need you to fight, please. For me. For yourself. I know you're still in there." As the days went on, Emily noticed something. There were more small movements, more subtle signs that Alex might be responding. His fingers twitched more frequently now. There was a slight shift in his breathing, a deeper rise in his chest. Emily couldn't be sure, but she felt a surge of hope that she hadn't felt before. But the family was still a constant threat. Mrs. Carter had made it clear that she was not going to allow any interference with her plans. Emily knew that if she was going to continue pushing Alex toward recovery, she would need help. But who could she trust in a house full of people who only cared about power? Her first ally came unexpectedly. Emily had always found Madame Evelyn, the housekeeper, to be an enigma. She was quiet, professional, and always seemed to know more than she let on. But one evening, after Emily had spent another long day with Alex, Evelyn caught her in the hallway. "Miss Matthews," Evelyn said in her soft, almost musical voice, "may I speak with you?" Emily stopped, surprised. She had never had a personal conversation with Evelyn before, and given the atmosphere of the mansion, she never imagined the staff would be interested in helping her. "I just wanted to say," Evelyn began, lowering her voice so only Emily could hear, "I've noticed how you've been taking care of Mr. Carter. You've been working tirelessly, and I admire that. I don't know if anyone else sees it, but I do." Emily felt a knot in her stomach. "Thank you, but I'm just doing my job." "It's what he needs." Evelyn nodded slowly. "More than that, Miss Matthews. You're giving him something none of us have given him in a long time: care and respect. His family, well, they care about power. But you? You care about him." Emily glanced around nervously, feeling the weight of the conversation. She hadn't expected this kind of acknowledgement from anyone in the house. "I'm trying to help him wake up, Evelyn. I think he can hear me, and I'm not going to let anyone stop me from giving him a chance." Evelyn paused, looking thoughtful. "I've been with the Carter family for many years, Miss Matthews. I've seen how things work behind closed doors, and I've seen how much Alex's accident has hurt them, not just emotionally, but financially. They're desperate to regain control, but I think you're right. Alex deserves more than just being kept on life support for their own gain." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "You'd help me?" Evelyn looked at her, her eyes serious. "I'll do what I can. I may not have much power in this house, but I know how to get information. I know how to help you get Alex the care he needs. Real care." Emily's plan had just started to take shape. With Evelyn's help, she was able to access medical supplies and treatment materials that were typically reserved for top-tier medical professionals. Evelyn also helped Emily avoid the notice of the rest of the household when she needed to work with Alex late at night, without interference from Mrs. Carter. But despite Evelyn's support, Emily knew that time was running out. Every day, Mrs. Carter was becoming more insistent that Alex be left alone to rest. It was clear she wanted him to stay in a state of unconsciousness for as long as possible to retain control. Emily could feel the pressure mounting, and she knew that soon she would have to make a decision, either confront Mrs. Carter directly or take more drastic measures. As she worked with Alex day after day, Emily could see that he was beginning to respond more. The twitches in his fingers were becoming more pronounced, and once, when she gently squeezed his hand, he squeezed back, just a little, but enough to make Emily believe that he was coming back. She would no longer let anyone stand in her way. It was time for Alex to wake up, and Emily would make sure it happened, no matter the cost. It had been a week since Emily's conversation with Mrs. Carter, and the tension in the house had only grown. The mansion, once a haven of luxury and tranquility, now felt like a prison. Every corner seemed to whisper of secrets, of things hidden in the shadows, things that Emily was determined to uncover. The air between her and Mrs. Carter had grown thick with distrust. The tension was palpable, and Emily could feel the weight of her decision to not let Alex remain a puppet controlled by his family's ambitions. The night was dark, and the sound of thunder rumbled in the distance, mirroring the storm that was brewing inside the mansion. Emily sat in the small, dimly lit study next to Alex's room, her mind racing. She had spent the last several days formulating a plan, one that could either free Alex from the grip of his family or shatter everything they had both worked for. She had come to a realization that no one else would act on Alex's behalf, no one except for her. Her only ally was Evelyn, the housekeeper who had proven herself as someone who understood the inner workings of the Carter household. Together, they had managed to keep the medical supplies flowing, and Emily had begun using more advanced methods to help Alex regain his strength. But every day that passed felt like another countdown to a confrontation she couldn't avoid any longer. One evening, as Emily sat by Alex's bedside reading to him, she felt a strange presence in the room. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Emily looked at Alex's still face, his features as sharp and defined as ever, but his body as still as the dead of night. She had been talking to him more, sharing more of her thoughts and feelings, hoping beyond hope that something, anything, might trigger a response. But tonight, there was something different in the air. She had been talking to him about her childhood, about her mother, about her struggles growing up in a small, run-down apartment. She had learned how to care for herself from a very young age, watching her mother work tirelessly to support them both. Emily hadn't realized it at the time, but those experiences shaped who she was today. Strong, independent, and unwilling to give up on the people she cared about. "Alex," she said softly, taking his hand into hers. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I hope you're fighting in there. I'm not going to give up on you. Not ever. You deserve a chance to live, to be free of your family's control. I don't care what they think or say. I'll do whatever it takes to help you. You deserve that much." She sat there for a long moment, her heart heavy with emotion. Just as she was about to stand up, she felt it, a subtle squeeze of her hand. Her heart skipped a beat. She looked down at Alex's hand, and her breath caught in her throat. Was it just a reflex? Or had he really responded? "Alex," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Did you hear me? Can you hear me?" For several seconds, nothing happened. She almost convinced herself it was just a moment of wishful thinking, until there it was again. His fingers twitched, and then his hand tightened around hers. A rush of excitement flooded through Emily, and her eyes welled up with tears. "You're back, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I knew you were in there." "I knew you could hear me." Her pulse quickened as she leaned over him, her face inches from his. "Alex, please, wake up. You don't have to be trapped in this coma anymore. Your family, they've kept you here for their own selfish reasons. You deserve to be free." As she sat there, watching his chest rise and fall with every breath, a new wave of determination surged within her. Emily knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Alex was coming back. He was fighting to wake up. But now, she needed to make sure that when he did, he would have a choice that wasn't controlled by his family. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. Mrs. Carter was not the kind of person who would let go of control without a fight. But Emily had no choice. She couldn't let Alex return to a life where he was nothing more than a puppet on a string, pulled by the strings of his powerful family. She had to act, and she had to act fast. The next day, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. She had noticed subtle changes in Alex's condition over the past few days, small improvements that gave her hope that he was beginning to wake up. His fingers had twitched more frequently, and his breathing was becoming steadier. But Emily knew that it wouldn't be enough. If she wanted to save Alex from his family's manipulation, she had to confront Mrs. Carter, once and for all. She had been putting it off for days, but the time had come. It was now or never. Emily found Mrs. Carter in the sitting room as usual, sitting by the large window and gazing out at the sprawling gardens. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, as the storm outside began to rage. Emily took a deep breath and approached her. "Mrs. Carter," she said firmly, "we need to talk." Mrs. Carter didn't look up from her chair, but she didn't need to. She already knew what Emily was going to say. "I know what you're trying to do," Emily said, her voice steady but tinged with anger. "You're trying to keep Alex in a coma so that you can keep control of everything. His fortune, his businesses, his life. But that's not fair to him. You're treating him like an object, like a tool to control. He's your son, and he deserves more than this. Mrs. Carter slowly turned to face her, a cold, calculating look in her eyes. "You think you can make him wake up? You think you can save him from what he was before?" "Emily, you don't understand the stakes here. Alex was never just a son to me. He was the heir to everything I built. And now he's just a broken shell. I can't afford to lose control, not when everything I've worked for is slipping away." Emily stood tall, refusing to back down. "Alex is more than just an asset to you. He's a human being, and I won't let you keep him in this state, locked away in a coma, just to preserve your precious empire." The air in the room was thick with tension as Emily spoke, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. "Mrs. Carter's face twisted into a sneer. "You have no idea what you're up against," she spat. "If Alex wakes up, everything will fall apart. The control, the power, it will all be lost. And you, Emily, will be the one responsible. Don't think I won't make you regret this." Emily's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "You've already lost, Mrs. Carter. Alex is coming back. He's fighting to wake up, and you can't stop it. You can't control him anymore." At that moment, the storm outside reached its peak, and thunder rumbled through the mansion. Emily stood face to face with Mrs. Carter, and for the first time she saw a flicker of uncertainty in the older woman's eyes. "Alex is not the same man he was," Mrs. Carter said, her voice softer now, though still cold. "I don't know if I can accept that." "You don't have to," Emily said gently. You just have to accept that he deserves to choose his own path." There was a long pause as Mrs. Carter stared at her, her face a mask of emotion, fear, desperation, and something else that Emily couldn't quite read. Then, without another word, Mrs. Carter stood up, her back straight, and walked toward the door. "You've made your choice, Mrs. Carter said quietly, "and I will make mine." With that, she left the room, leaving Emily standing there, her heart pounding in her chest. She had taken a stand, but she knew this was far from over. The battle was just beginning. The days that followed Emily's confrontation with Mrs. Carter were tense, fraught with a sense of inevitability. Despite her defiant words, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the precipice of something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Mrs. Carter had retreated into her fortress of control, her icy demeanor more pronounced than ever. She said little to Emily, but the message was clear. The battle for Alex's fate had just begun. But there were moments of hope, small, fleeting moments, that kept Emily's resolve strong. It started with the slightest signs: Alex's fingers twitching more often, his eyelids fluttering with greater frequency. For a few moments each day, Emily would see his chest rise and fall in a rhythm that felt more natural, more like a person who was alive, who was fighting to wake up. She would sit by his side for hours, whispering to him, telling him about the outside world, about the life he had before the accident. But most of all, she spoke to him about the life he could have now, a life free from the control of his family, a life where he could choose his own destiny. One evening, as she sat by his bedside, reading a book aloud, she noticed something that made her heart leap in her chest. Alex's thumb twitched ever so slightly. It was small, almost imperceptible, but Emily knew it for what it was, a sign. She quickly set the book down and leaned over him, her voice trembling with anticipation. "Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know you're in there. Please wake up. I need you to fight." "Please." For what seemed like an eternity, nothing happened. Emily's heart sank, the small glimmer of hope she had felt now dimming. But then, there it was again. His thumb twitched again, this time more pronounced, more deliberate. "Oh my God," Emily gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Alex, you're coming back." Her hands shook as she gently grasped his hand, willing him to respond again. This time, she could feel the strength in his grip, faint though it was. She had done it. She had been talking to him for weeks, believing in him when no one else would. And now, it was finally happening. The next morning, Emily couldn't contain her excitement. She rushed down the hall, her feet barely touching the floor as she made her way to the kitchen. Evelyn was already there, preparing the morning meal. Emily burst into the room, her face lit up with joy. "Evelyn, you won't believe it," Emily exclaimed, her voice bubbling with excitement. Alex responded. "He squeezed my hand." Evelyn turned slowly, her eyes narrowing in surprise. "Are you sure, Emily? I'm sure," Emily interrupted, her voice full of conviction. "I felt it, Evelyn. I know it wasn't just a reflex. He's waking up, I'm certain of it." Evelyn's expression softened and she nodded slowly. "That's good news, Emily, but you know this won't be easy. Mrs. Carter won't let you have your way. She's got too much at stake." Emily nodded, her smile faltering slightly. "I know. I've been preparing myself for that, but I won't stop. I won't let her, or anyone else, keep Alex in that coma for their own benefit. He deserves better." Evelyn placed the last dish on the counter and looked at Emily, her eyes full of a quiet understanding. "You're not alone in this, Emily. I'll help you however I can. Just be careful. Mrs. Carter won't take kindly to you challenging her." Emily's heart swelled with gratitude for Evelyn's support. She knew the housekeeper was risking a lot by helping her, but with Alex showing signs of awakening, There was no turning back. Later that afternoon, Emily returned to Alex's room, her determination renewed. She sat by his side, watching him closely, waiting for any sign that he was truly coming back. She couldn't help but marvel at how much she had come to care for him. His once cold and distant aura was now a faint memory. What remained was a man who needed her, a man who needed to be freed from the clutches of his family's control. It wasn't just the physical signs that gave her hope, Alex's subtle movements, his slightly responsive hand squeezes. It was the emotional connection they had started to develop. She had seen him vulnerable, as weak as anyone could be, and it had forged a bond between them. She wasn't just his caregiver anymore. She was his advocate, his protector. But she knew the time for waiting was over. Emily had spent long enough observing from the sidelines, watching as Alex slowly regained some level of awareness. Now, it was time for action. She had to confront Mrs. Carter again, this time with something far more powerful than her words. That evening, as the storm clouds gathered once more over the mansion, Emily gathered her courage and made her way to Mrs. Carter's study. She had no intention of backing down. She knew what she had to do. Mrs. Carter was sitting in her usual spot, a glass of wine in hand, her gaze fixed on the far-off horizon. The room was dimly lit, a fireplace crackling softly in the corner. As Emily stepped into the room, Mrs. Carter didn't even glance up. "Emily," Mrs. Carter said flatly, as if she had been expecting her. "What do you want?" "I'm not leaving until we talk," Emily said, her voice firm. She walked further into the room, standing just a few feet away from the woman who had caused her so much grief. Mrs. Carter finally turned her eyes toward Emily, her face a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "What is it now, Emily? I told you before you can't force him to wake up." "You're wrong," Emily said, her voice rising slightly. "He is waking up. And I won't stand by while you and your family try to keep him locked in this coma for your own gain." Mrs. Carter's face hardened, her eyes narrowing as she studied Emily. "You think you know what's best for him? You've been here for what, a few months? Do you really think you can change what's been years in the making?" "I know what's best for him," Emily said firmly, her heart pounding in her chest. "He deserves to make his own choices, to wake up on his own terms. He's not a tool for you to control." Mrs. Carter stood up, her face pale with anger. "You've crossed a line, Emily," she said coldly. "I've tried to be patient with you, but this is where I draw the line. If you continue with this nonsense, I will have no choice but to ask you to leave." Emily didn't flinch. "You can try to stop me, Mrs. Carter, but Alex is coming back, and when he does, he'll make his own decisions." A flicker of uncertainty passed through Mrs. Carter's eyes, but she quickly masked it with a cold smile. "We'll see about that." Emily turned to leave, but before she could exit the room, she turned back to face Mrs. Carter one last time. "I'm not giving up. Not now, not ever." With that, she walked out of the study, leaving Mrs. Carter standing behind, the weight of Emily's words lingering in the air like smoke. The next few days felt like an eternity. Emily could feel the change happening, the shift in power that was slowly taking place. She wasn't sure how it would all unfold, but there was no denying that Alex's recovery was gaining momentum. Every day his movements became a little stronger, his awareness a little clearer. And then, one evening, Emily arrived at Alex's room after a long day of avoiding Mrs. Carter's sharp gaze and cold demeanor. As she entered the room, she found herself standing still, her breath catching in her throat. Alex was awake. His eyes were open, though they were heavy with fatigue. His lips parted as though trying to speak, but no words came. Emily's heart leaped in her chest, and she rushed to his side. "Alex!" she cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "You're awake. You're really awake." His eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, it felt as though time had stopped. She could see the recognition in his gaze. He was there. He was with her. After Alex's awakening, the months that followed felt like a new chapter. As Alex regained his strength, he reflected on everything Emily had done for him. Emily, in return, felt her bond with him deepening. Together, they were rebuilding a life that was once controlled by his family. One evening, as the sun set over the estate, Alex looked at Emily, his heart full of gratitude. "Emily, I owe you everything," he said. "You saved me from a life that wasn't mine. You believed in me when no one else did." Emily smiled. "All I need is you, Alex." Alex, overwhelmed with emotion, knew it was time to make a grand gesture. A few weeks later, Alex decided to propose to Emily. The golden light of the evening made the moment feel perfect as he took her hand. "Emily," he began, his voice steady. "You saved me. You believed in me when no one else did. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" Emily, overwhelmed with joy, replied, "Yes, Alex, of course I will." They embraced, the world around them falling away as they shared this intimate, life-changing moment. The wedding was a grand affair, held in the mansion with friends and family gathered. Emily, radiant in a white lace gown, walked down the aisle toward Alex, who stood waiting at the altar, looking dashing in a tuxedo. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, with vows exchanged that promised love, support, and a future together. When the priest declared them husband and wife, Alex kissed Emily, and the room erupted into applause. The reception was filled with laughter, music, and dancing. Under the stars, Alex and Emily shared their first dance as husband and wife. Their love for each other was evident, and as they swayed together, they knew they had overcome every obstacle. Alex whispered, "I'll spend every day making sure you never regret saying yes." Emily, with tears in her eyes, smiled, replying, "You saved me too, Alex." As the night ended, Alex and Emily stood on the balcony, hand in hand, looking toward the future. "What's next for us?" Alex asked. Emily smiled, filled with hope. "Whatever we choose, together." And in that moment, they knew nothing could stand in their way. Their new life was just beginning. And so, after everything Alex and Emily had been through, the trials, the struggles, and the battles, they found their way to happiness. Alex, no longer controlled by his family's demands, stood side by side with Emily, the woman who believed in him when no one else did. Together, they faced the future, hand in hand, ready to build a life filled with love and freedom. The mansion, once a symbol of power and control, became their home, a place where love and hope thrived. And as Alex and Emily danced together at their wedding, they knew that no matter what challenges awaited them, they would face them together. What do you think about Alex and Emily's journey? Did you feel the emotions building as they fought for their freedom and love? Do you think Alex will keep his promise to Emily, or will his family try to pull him back into their world? If you enjoyed this story and want more twists, romance, and thrilling moments, make sure to like this video and comment your thoughts below. I'd love to know your opinion. And don't forget to rate the video from 1 to 10. Your feedback means a lot. Subscribe to the channel for more exciting content and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thank you for watching. Your support helps me create even better content for you. Let's continue this journey together. See you in the next video.